The snow fell
This is for
heavy that
you.
Christmas Eve,
Oh, you
covering the
shouldn't
streets of
have.
Chicago in a
Wow.
Merry
blanket of white
Christmas.
that
Merry
looked pure
Christmas.
from a distance but turned to gray slush under the feet of those who had nowhere warm to go. Cassandra Moretti stood outside the Riverside Diner at exactly
I
6:45
have to
in the
get
evening,
inside.
her hand gripping the worn strap of a canvas bag that held everything she owned in this world. The bag was light, too light. Inside, 3 changes of clothes for her daughters, one for herself, a hairbrush with missing teeth, and an envelope containing $15 in crumpled bills. $15. The number had been burned into her mind for the past 48 hours. $15 separated her daughters from hunger. $15 stood between them and another night shivering in the car, parked 3 blocks away, its gas tank reading empty, its heater broken since October. Cassandra was 28 years old, though the mirror that morning had shown her a woman who looked 40. Dark circles carved deep beneath her eyes, cheekbones sharp where they'd once been soft. Hair that had been carefully styled just 8 months ago now hung limp and unwashed, tucked hastily beneath a knit cap with a hole in the side. Her jacket, olive green and threadbare at the elbows, had been Marcus's. She'd taken to wearing it in November, when her own coat disappeared from the homeless shelter stolen, while she slept with one arm around each of her daughters. The jacket still smelled faintly of him, or maybe that was just her imagination clinging to ghosts. She looked down at the 2 small figures pressed against her sides. Rosalie and Iris, 5 years old, twins, born 7 minutes apart on a bright June morning that now felt like it belonged to someone else's life. Rosa stood on Cassandra's left, her small hand wrapped around her mother's with a grip that hadn't loosened in 3 months. The child's blonde hair, once kept in neat braids, now hung tangled and dull. She wore a beige sweater, pilled and worn thin at the elbows, stretched over a dress that had been pink once but had faded to the color of old dishwater. No shoes, just socks. Thick wool socks at least, but socks nonetheless already soaked through from the walk. They'd lost the shoes 2 weeks ago. Cassandra had set them outside the motel room to dry, and when she woke at dawn to the sound of checkout time warnings, they were gone. Just gone. The world had a way of taking things from people who had nothing left to lose. Rosa didn't complain. That was the worst part. 5 years old, and she'd learned not to complain. She just looked up at her mother with eyes too old for her face and asked questions in a whisper, as if speaking too loud might shatter whatever fragile safety they'd found. Iris stood on Cassandra's right, quieter than her sister, always quieter. Where Rosa had learned to be brave, Iris had learned to disappear. She pressed herself against Cassandra's leg, like she was trying to merge with her to become small enough that the world might forget she existed. Iris's sweater matched Rosa's, bought from the same thrift store bin back when Cassandra still had money for such luxuries. The child's face was pale, almost translucent in the glow of the diner's neon sign. Her lips had a faint blue tinge that made Cassandra's chest tighten with a fear she couldn't afford to feel. They were cold. Her babies were so cold. Cassandra looked through the diner's front window. Warm light spilled out onto the snowy sidewalk. Inside, she could see families, couples, people eating food that steamed in the air, drinking coffee from thick ceramic mugs, laughing at jokes she couldn't hear through the glass. Normal people, people who belonged. For a long moment, Cassandra considered walking away. They didn't belong in there. Look at them. Look at what they'd become. Barefoot children and a mother who smelled like 3 days without a shower, wearing a dead man's jacket and carrying $15 like it was a treasure. But Rosa's hand tightened in hers, and Cassandra felt the tremor running through her daughter's small body. Not just cold, hunger. The kind of hunger that gnawed and twisted and made children cry in their sleep. They hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. A shared bagel from a gas station trash can, still wrapped in paper, only one bite taken out of it. Cassandra had pretended it was fresh, had smiled while her daughters ate, had told them she wasn't hungry, even as her stomach cramped and growled. She'd been lying to them a lot lately. The door to the diner opened, and a burst of warm air carried the smell of coffee and bacon and something baking. Something sweet. Cassandra's mouth watered so intensely it hurt. Rosa looked up at her. Those eyes, blue like Marcus's had been, but with a depth of understanding that no 5-year-old should possess. "Mama," Rosa whispered, "can we go inside?" Cassandra's throat closed. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak, and pushed open the door. The warmth hit them like a wall. After 3 months of cold, after sleeping in a car with broken heating and walking through snow in wet socks, the warmth of the Riverside Diner felt like something holy. The place wasn't fancy. Red vinyl booths lined the walls, their surfaces cracked with age. A long counter stretched along one side, chrome stools bolted to the floor. The tile was checkered black and white, scuffed from decades of foot traffic. Christmas decorations hung from the ceiling, paper snowflakes and plastic holly, the kind of decorations that got reused year after year until they became part of the place's character. A dozen people scattered throughout the space looked up as Cassandra and her daughters entered, then looked away. Quick glances the kind people gave when they saw something that made them uncomfortable but didn't want to be caught staring. Cassandra felt every one of those glances like a physical touch. Judging, assessing, dismissing. She kept her head down and moved toward a booth in the corner, the farthest one from the door. A place where they might be less visible, less noticeable, less real. Rosa and Iris slid into the booth without being told, pressing close together on one side. Cassandra sat across from them, her back to the room, and reached for the menu wedged between the napkin dispenser and the salt shaker. Her hands were shaking. "Stop it," she told herself. "Ja, I assume." See, they'll know, but her hands wouldn't obey. 3 months of running, of fear of watching her daughters grow thinner and quieter, had taken something from her that she didn't know how to get back. The menu was laminated plastic sticky to the touch with photos of the food next to prices that made Cassandra's stomach sink. Grilled cheese sandwich, $7.50. Small milk, $2.75. She did the math in her head the way she'd been doing math for months now. Counting pennies, counting minutes, counting the diminishing space between survival and something worse. 2 sandwiches, 2 milks. That was $20.50. She had 15. Cassandra's vision tunneled. The edges of the menu blurred as panic rose in her throat like bile. She could get 1 sandwich, split it between them. 1 milk shared, that would be $10.25. Leave her with $4.75. But they were so hungry. Rosa had stopped. Mentioning the hunger 3 weeks ago had learned to ignore the cramping in her small stomach. Iris just grew quieter, more distant, fading a little more each day. How do you choose? How do you look at your children and decide which one gets more food because you miscalculated? Because you failed? Because the world ground you down to nothing? "Mama," Rosa's voice pulled her back. Cassandra looked up to find both her daughters watching her with those 2 old eyes. "It's okay, Mama," Rosa whispered. "We're not that hungry." The lie was so transparent, so heartbreakingly obvious, that Cassandra felt something crack inside her chest. 5 years old. 5 years old, and her daughter was trying to comfort her, trying to make it easier, trying to be the strong one. Before Cassandra could respond, a woman appeared beside their table. 50s, maybe, with gray, streaked hair, pulled back in a severe bun, and a white apron tied around a body that had seen too many years on her feet. Her name tag read Diane. The waitress pulled a pad from her apron pocket and clicked her pen with the practiced motion of someone who'd done this 10,000 times. Then she looked at Cassandra. Really looked. And her expression shifted. Not sympathy. Something colder. Something that made Cassandra's spine straighten with defensive tension. "What can I get you?" Diane asked, her voice flat and professional, in a way that carried judgment in its very neutrality. Cassandra opened her mouth. Closed it. The words stuck in her throat like glass. 2? She started, then stopped. 2 grilled cheese sandwiches and 2 small milks. Diane wrote it down without looking at the pad. Her eyes stayed on Cassandra's face, on the hollow cheeks and desperate eyes. "Anything for you." "No, just for them." The waitress's mouth tightened, a thin line of disapproval. She glanced down at Rosa and Iris, taking in the wet socks, the worn sweaters, the bone-deep exhaustion visible in 2 5-year-old faces. "You have enough to cover that?" Diane asked, and there it was. The question that wasn't really a question. The doubt, the assumption. Heat flooded Cassandra's face. Shame. Burning absolute shame. "Yes," she said, and her voice came out harder than she intended. "I have enough." Diane nodded slowly. "Uh-huh. I'll need to see that before I put the order in." The diner had gone quiet, not obviously. The low murmur of conversation continued. Christmas music still played from speakers. Cassandra couldn't see, but there was a quality to the silence underneath it all. The silence of people listening while pretending not to. Cassandra's hands shook harder as she reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out the envelope. She opened it, careful not to let the waitress see how little was inside, and counted out $10.50 onto the table. She'd been wrong about the price. The math was wrong. It was 25 cents more than she'd calculated. $10.25 on the table. $4.75 left in the envelope. Not enough. Diane looked at the money, then at Cassandra, and the thin line of her mouth grew thinner. That's not enough, she said, and her voice carried now loud enough for nearby tables to hear clearly. The total is $20.50. I, Cassandra's voice broke. I thought I miscounted. Well, you did. Diane crossed her arms over her chest. So what's it going to be? You want to keep both sandwiches and figure out how to pay? Or do you want to adjust your order? Adjust your order. Such a polite way to say your children don't get to eat. Rosa's hand found Cassandra's under the table, small fingers squeezing, trying to give comfort when there was none to give. Maybe, Cassandra's voice was barely a whisper now. Maybe just one sandwich, we can share, and one milk. Diane made a note on her pad with theatrical slowness. One sandwich, one milk. That comes to $10.25. She looked pointedly at the money on the table. You can cover that. The words hung in the air like an accusation. From somewhere behind Cassandra, a woman's voice cut through the Christmas music. Middle-aged, well-dressed, from the sound of it, the kind of voice that belonged to someone who'd never counted pennies or chosen which child ate more. Some people really don't know when they're not wanted, the voice said, not quite quietly enough to be private. Walking in here looking like that with children in that condition. There are shelters, there are services, no need to make the rest of us uncomfortable. A man's laugh answered her. Right, I mean, we're trying to have a nice Christmas Eve dinner and we have to watch that. Cassandra's vision blurred. Hot tears burned behind her eyes, but she blinked them back furiously. Don't cry. Don't cry in front of them. Don't let Rosa and Iris see you break. She reached for the money on the table with shaking hands, ready to gather it up, ready to leave, ready to walk back out into the snow and find somewhere, anywhere, that they could be invisible again. And then a chair scraped. The sound cut through every other noise in the diner like a knife through silk. A chair pushing back. Heavy, deliberate. The entire restaurant went dead silent. Cassandra didn't turn around. She kept her eyes on the money, on her daughters' faces, on anything but whatever was happening behind her. But she felt it. The shift in the air, the way oxygen seemed to leave the room all at once. Footsteps, slow, measured. The footsteps of someone who had never hurried for anything in his life, because the world waited for him, not the other way around. They stopped beside Cassandra's table. She looked up. The man standing there was tall, over 6 feet, with shoulders that stretched the fabric of a black suit that probably cost more than Cassandra had earned in the last 3 years combined. His hair, dark and touched with gray at the temples, was slicked back from a face that was all hard angles and controlled violence. But it was his eyes that made Cassandra's breath catch, dark, almost black, the kind of eyes that had seen terrible things and done worse. And they were looking at her daughters, specifically at Rosa. The man stared at the child with an intensity that bordered on painful, his jaw tight, a muscle jumping beneath the skin. His hands scarred across the knuckles and decorated with tattoos that disappeared beneath his cuffs, clenched and unclenched at his sides. 4 other men stood behind him. Younger, harder. The kind of men who made other people cross the street without quite knowing why. They wore dark suits and expressions of careful neutrality positioned at strategic points around the diner with the practiced ease of people who'd done this before. But the man in front, the one looking at Rosa with something Cassandra couldn't name, commanded attention the way some men commanded armies. He turned his gaze to Diane. When he spoke, his voice was low, quiet, but it carried absolute authority. How much does she owe? Diane's face had gone pale. Mr. Castellano, I wasn't. How much? The waitress swallowed hard. $10 for the difference, but it's not. Bring them everything. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. 2 grilled cheese sandwiches, 2 milks, and whatever else 2 5-year-old children might want. Dessert, hot chocolate, soup if they like soup, everything. Sir, you don't have to. I didn't ask if I had to. His eyes never left Rosa's face. I told you what I want. Bring it. Diane nodded quickly and disappeared toward the kitchen, practically running. The man's attention shifted to the table where the woman's voice had come from. The couple sat frozen, their expensive clothes and perfect hair suddenly seeming less impressive. You, he said to the woman, you have something you'd like to say. You want to keep talking about people who make you uncomfortable. The woman's face flushed red, then white. No, sir, I apologize. You apologize to her. He gestured toward Cassandra without looking away from the woman. Not to me. I'm sorry, the woman stammered, looking at Cassandra with wide, frightened eyes. I didn't mean. I'm sorry. The man turned back to Cassandra's table. For a long moment, he just stood there looking at Rosa and Iris, with an expression that Cassandra couldn't read. Pain, maybe, or something older than pain. Something that had scarred over but never healed. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a wallet. Leather, well-worn. He opened it and extracted several bills without counting them. $300 bills. He placed them on the table next to Cassandra's crumpled $15. For coats, he said quietly, and shoes. Real ones. And whatever else you need. Cassandra stared at the money like it might bite air. I don't. You have children. His voice was rougher now. They're cold. They're hungry. You take the money. But I don't know you. I can't just. He finally looked at her, really looked at her, and Cassandra saw something in his eyes that made her throat close. Recognition. Not of her, but of something she represented. Some memory that lived behind those dark eyes and caused pain when it surfaced. My name is Dominic Castellano, he said. And 27 years ago, I watched my little sister die because I wasn't strong enough to protect her. She was 7 years old. She had a scar on her left wrist from burning herself on a stove when she was 3. His eyes drifted back to Rosa, to the small scar visible on the child's left wrist. Her name was Lucia. He continued, his voice barely above a whisper now. And she died on Christmas Eve, trying to buy me a birthday cake with $5 she'd been saving. She walked into the wrong neighborhood at the wrong time, and men who should have protected her hurt her instead. Cassandra's heart hammered against her ribs. I have spent 27 years, Dominic said, making sure that never happens again. Not on my watch, not in my city, not to any child, ever. He turned and walked back to his booth without waiting for a response. The 4 men followed him like shadows, taking up positions around the diner with quiet efficiency. Cassandra sat frozen, staring at the money on the table. Rosa tugged on her sleeve. Mama, who was that man? Iris, speaking for the first time since they'd entered the diner, whispered, Is he an angel? Before Cassandra could answer, Diane returned carrying a tray loaded with food. 2 grilled cheese sandwiches cut into triangles, 2 glasses of milk with straws, 2 bowls of tomato soup that steamed in the cool air. And because Diane had apparently received very clear instructions, 2 slices of chocolate cake tall enough to make both girls gasp. From Mr. Castellano, Diane said, her voice subdued and respectful now. He says, eat as much as you want. There's more if you need it. She set everything on the table with careful precision, then placed another piece of paper next to the money. A business card, heavy stock, embossed lettering. Cassandra picked it up with shaking hands. Dominic Castellano. Below the name, a phone number. Nothing else. Rosa and Iris didn't wait for permission. They picked up the sandwiches with both hands and bit into them with the desperate hunger of children who'd learned that food was never guaranteed. Cheese stretched between their small fingers. They chewed fast, barely tasting it, driven by a need deeper than appetite. Cassandra watched them eat and felt tears finally spill over hot tracks down her cold cheeks. Across the diner in a booth near the back, Dominic Castellano sat with his hands wrapped around a cup of black coffee. He didn't drink it, just held it, staring into the dark liquid like it held answers to questions he'd stopped asking years ago. Vincent Santoro, his second in command for the past 12 years, slid into the booth across from him. Vincent was 38, built like a boxer with a face that had been broken and reset enough times to give him a permanent scowl, even when he was smiling. Boss, Vincent said quietly. That was generous. Dominic didn't look up from his coffee. That was necessary. You don't know them. You don't know their situation. For all we know, I know she's running. Dominic's voice was flat, certain. I know she's terrified. I know those children are cold and hungry and have been for a while. And I know, he stopped. His jaw worked. I know that little girl has a scar on her wrist exactly like Lucia's. Vincent was quiet for a moment. Then, it's been 27 years, Dom. I remember every day of those 27 years. Dominic finally looked up and his eyes were hard. Cold. The eyes of a man who'd built an empire on fear and maintained it with calculated violence. Every single day I see her face. I hear her screaming my name. I feel her blood on my hands while I tried to stop the bleeding and couldn't. He set the coffee cup down with careful precision. That woman in the booth, he continued. She looks the way my mother looked after Lucia died. Broken, empty, barely holding on. And those little girls look exactly like Lucia did when she was that age. Scared, cold, trying so hard to be brave. So you gave them money. So I gave them a chance. Dominic's voice dropped lower. The chance I didn't give Lucia, the chance I didn't have back then because I was 15 years old and powerless and stupid. Vincent nodded slowly. He'd known Dominic since they were teenagers, had been there the night Lucia died, had helped bury her in a grave that Dominic visited every year on Christmas Eve before the rest of the world woke up. You think this is about Lucia? Vincent said carefully. Or is this about something else? Dominic was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, the woman's scared, not just scared, terrified. She keeps looking at the door. Every time someone walks by the window, she flinches. She's not homeless by choice, Vincent. She's running from something or someone. You want me to look into it? I want you to find out everything. Dominic's voice hardened. Her name, her situation, who she's running from, and why. He looked across the diner to where Cassandra sat watching her daughters eat, her face a mask of exhausted relief. And I want to know, Dominic added quietly, who made her so scared that she's willing to starve herself to feed her children. Vincent pulled out his phone and typed a quick message. Within seconds, responses started coming in. The organization that Dominic had built over 2 decades moved with the efficiency of a machine gathering information, making calls, pulling strings that most people didn't even know existed. It'll take a few hours, Vincent said, but we'll know by morning. Dominic nodded. He stood and buttoned his suit jacket with the same careful precision he applied to everything. A man who controlled 60% of the underground operations in Chicago didn't survive by being careless. But as he walked toward the door, he paused beside Cassandra's table one more time. She looked up, her eyes red-rimmed and exhausted. There's a hotel 3 blocks north, Dominic said. The Riverside Inn, room 212. It's been paid for. 1 week, no questions asked. You go there tonight. You keep your daughters warm. And tomorrow, he paused, tomorrow you call that number if you need help. Why? Cassandra's voice broke on the word. Why are you doing this? You don't know us. We're nothing to you. Dominic looked at Rosa, who'd stopped eating to listen, her small face smeared with chocolate from the cake she'd moved on to. You're not nothing, he said quietly. You're somebody's daughter, somebody's mother. And in this city on this night, that means you're protected. He walked out into the snow without another word, his men following in formation, leaving behind a diner full of people who would spend the rest of their lives telling the story of the night Dominic Castellano made them feel ashamed of their own comfort. Cassandra sat in the booth long after her daughters had fallen asleep, full for the first time in weeks, their heads resting against her arms. She stared at the business card at the $300 at the address Diane had written on a napkin. Room 212, Riverside Inn, 1 week. Outside, snow continued to fall, covering the city in white that looked pure from a distance but turned to gray slush under the feet of those who walked through it. But for the first time in 8 months, Cassandra Moretti allowed herself to feel something that wasn't fear or exhaustion or despair. She allowed herself to feel hope. Small, fragile, dangerous, but hope nonetheless. Because somewhere in this city, a man who controlled an empire built on violence had looked at her daughters and seen a ghost from his past. And instead of walking away, instead of ignoring them the way everyone else had, he'd made a choice. To help, to protect, to give them one night of safety in a world that had shown them nothing but cruelty. Cassandra didn't know what would happen tomorrow. Didn't know if Gregory Brennan and Tommy Valdez would find them again. Didn't know if this brief respite was just delaying the inevitable. But tonight her daughters would sleep in a warm bed. Tonight they would have full stomachs and dry feet and the kind of safety that had become a distant memory. And tomorrow she would make a choice of her own. She picked up the business card and traced the embossed lettering with one finger. Dominic Castellano. The name meant something in this city. Everyone knew it, even people like Cassandra who'd tried so hard to live outside the world where names like his mattered. You didn't control 60% of Chicago's underground without becoming a legend, without becoming the kind of man that other men feared and respected in equal measure. He was dangerous, violent, the kind of man her mother would have told her to run from. But he'd also looked at her daughters with tears in his eyes and seen children who needed help instead of burdens to ignore. Cassandra made her decision. Tomorrow she would call the number. Tomorrow she would tell Dominic Castellano everything about Marcus's death, about Gregory Brennan and Tommy Valdez and their impossible debt, about the threats and the fear and the recordings she'd made that proved they were planning something worse than just taking money. She would tell him everything and she would ask for help, not because she was weak, not because she couldn't fight her own battles, but because sometimes survival meant knowing when you needed an army. And Dominic Castellano commanded the most dangerous army in Chicago. Rosa stirred against her arm, murmuring something in her sleep. Cassandra brushed hair back from her daughter's face and felt the ghost of Marcus's presence like a hand on her shoulder. He would have hated this. Would have hated that she was even considering asking a man like Dominic Castellano for help. But Marcus was dead. Dead for 8 months, leaving behind debt and danger and 2 daughters who needed their mother to be stronger than pride. Cassandra gathered Rosa in one arm and Iris in the other. They were heavier now, full of food, sleeping the deep sleep of children who'd finally found safety. She stood carefully, mindful of their weight, and walked toward the door. Diane appeared beside her with a paper bag. Leftovers, the waitress said, her voice soft with something that might have been apology or shame or both. For breakfast tomorrow. Cassandra took the bag with a no. No words. She had no words left. Outside, the snow had stopped falling. The street lamps cast yellow circles of light across the white ground, and somewhere in the distance, church bells rang to mark the hour. 10 o'clock on Christmas Eve. Cassandra turned north toward the hotel, toward room 212, toward one night of peace in a world that had shown her nothing but chaos. Behind her, the Riverside Diner glowed warm and bright, a beacon in the darkness. And somewhere in that darkness, in a black car parked 3 blocks away, Dominic Castellano watched through tinted windows as a woman and her 2 daughters walked through the snow toward temporary safety. Vincent sat in the driver's seat, phone pressed to his ear, taking notes as information flowed in from a dozen sources across the city. Her name is Cassandra Moretti, Vincent said quietly. Husband Marcus died 8 months ago. Heart attack. 34 years old. No prior health conditions. Dominic's jaw tightened. 34-year-olds don't just drop dead. My thoughts exactly. I've got someone checking hospital records now. But boss, there's more. Marcus Moretti had been making calls to the FBI 2 weeks before he died. 3 different calls. No record of what they discussed, but the agent he contacted specializes in organized crime. The temperature inside the car seemed to drop. He was investigating someone, Dominic said. It wasn't a question. And 2 weeks after he died, his widow got visited by Gregory Brennan and Tommy Valdez. You know those names. Dominic's hands curled into fists. I know those names. Everyone in his world knew those names. Low-level debt collectors who worked for anyone willing to pay. No loyalty, no honor, just thugs who took pleasure in making people suffer. They've been collecting on a supposed debt of $43,000, Vincent continued. Original loan was $8,000 from a company called KV Financial. But here's the interesting part. KV Financial is a shell company. Registered 2 years ago. Single owner. Who? Victor Kane. The name hung in the air like poison. Victor Kane, head of the Russian syndicate that had been trying to push into Dominic's territory for the past 5 years. A man who dealt in drugs, weapons, and human trafficking with equal enthusiasm. A man who operated outside every code, every rule, every principle that men like Dominic used to maintain some semblance of order in a disordered world. So Marcus Moretti was investigating Kane's operation, Dominic said slowly. And 2 weeks later, he's dead. And 2 weeks after that, Kane's dogs show up to terrorize his widow and steal everything she owns under the guise of debt collection. That's what it looks like. Dominic watched Cassandra and her daughters disappear into the hotel 3 blocks away. Safe, for now. Find out everything, he said. Every call Marcus made, every person he talked to, every detail of his death, and get me files on every widow that Brennan and Valdez have collected from in the past 2 years. You think there are others? I know there are others. Men like that don't stop with one victim. They find a system that works and they repeat it until someone stops them. Vincent made notes on his phone. And what are you going to do? Dominic was quiet for a long moment, watching the hotel where a woman and 2 children were checking into a room that would give them 1 week of safety, 1 week to catch their breath, 1 week before the world came crashing back down, unless someone prevented that crash. I'm going to do what I should have done 27 years ago, Dominic said. I'm going to protect someone who needs protecting. And then I'm going to find the men who made her afraid, and I'm going to remind them that there are rules in this city. And if they've forgotten the rules, Dominic's smile was cold, empty of everything except promise. Then I'll teach them again, slowly. He pulled out his phone and made a call. It was answered on the first ring. It's me, Dominic said. I need a team on the Riverside Inn, room 212, 3 people inside, a woman and 2 5-year-old girls. No one gets close to that room. No one even looks at that building funny. 24-hour coverage. I don't care if it's Christmas. I want eyes on them until I say otherwise. He ended the call and looked at Vincent. "Take me home. I have calls to make." The car pulled away from the curb, leaving behind tracks in the fresh snow. And in room 212 of the Riverside Inn, Cassandra Moretti stood at the window looking out at the city that had tried to break her, holding a business card in one hand and feeling the weight of a decision she'd already made. Tomorrow she would call the number. Tomorrow she would tell a dangerous man about other dangerous men. Tomorrow she would ask for help from someone who terrified her almost as much as Gregory Brennan and Tommy Valdez. But tonight she watched her daughter sleep in a real bed for the first time in 3 months, and she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, the worst was over. She was wrong. The worst was yet to come. But when it arrived, she wouldn't face it alone. Because Dominic Castellano had made a promise in a diner on Christmas Eve, and Dominic Castellano always kept his promises. Always. The morning came slow and gray winter light filtering through the curtains of room 212 like something uncertain of its welcome. Cassandra woke to the sound of silence. Not the restless silence of a car where every creak and shift meant potential danger. Not the tense silence of a shelter where 100 desperate people pretended not to hear each other's nightmares. Real silence. Safe silence. The kind that came with locked doors and walls thick enough to muffle the outside world. She lay still for a moment, disoriented, before memory crashed back. The diner. The man with dark eyes. The $300 still folded in her jacket pocket like a hallucination made solid. Dominic Castellano. Rosa and Iris slept on either side of her, their small bodies warm and relaxed in a way they hadn't been for months. Full stomachs, soft beds, safety however temporary. Cassandra eased herself out from between them with the practiced stealth of a mother who'd learned to move without waking sleeping children. She stood beside the bed and looked down at her daughters. Rosa's face had lost some of the tension that had been carved into it over the past months. Her breathing was deep and even. One small hand clutched the edge of the blanket like an anchor. Iris had curled into a ball the way she always did, making herself small even in sleep. But her face was peaceful. No tears dried on her cheeks. No trembling lips caught mid-sob. They looked like children again. Just children. Not survivors. Not refugees from a life that had collapsed around them. Cassandra felt something break loose in her chest. Not quite hope. Not yet. But maybe the space where hope could grow if given time. She moved to the window and looked out at the street below. Early morning traffic moved slow through yesterday's snow. People going to work. Normal people with normal lives. The kind of normal that felt like a foreign country now. And there, parked across the street beneath a bare-branched oak tree, was a black sedan with tinted windows. Cassandra's breath caught. The car hadn't been there when they arrived last night. She was certain of that. She'd memorized every vehicle on the block, every shadow, every potential threat. It was a habit born of 3 months running. But this car, she watched it for 5 full minutes and nothing moved. No one got in or out. It just sat there, engine off, windows too dark to see through. Protection, she realized. Dominic Castellano's men. Watching. Guarding. The thought should have terrified her. Should have triggered every instinct that screamed danger when powerful men took interest in powerless women. Instead, she felt something she barely recognized anymore. Relief. Cassandra turned from the window and moved to the small bathroom. The mirror showed her a stranger. Hollow cheeks, dark circles carved deep beneath eyes that had forgotten how to be anything except vigilant. Hair tangled and dull, but alive. Still alive. Still fighting. She turned on the shower and waited for the water to heat. When steam began to fog the mirrors, she stepped under his spray and let it wash away 3 months of accumulated fear and filth. The water ran gray at first, then clear. She stood under it longer than necessary, feeling the heat work its way into muscles that had been tense for so long they'd forgotten what relaxation felt like. When she finally emerged wrapped in a towel that was rough but clean, she found Rosa awake. The child sat up in bed, looking around the room with wide eyes as if trying to confirm that this wasn't a dream. "Mama," Rosa's voice was small, uncertain. "I'm here, baby." "Where are we?" Cassandra sat on the edge of the bed and pulled her daughter close. "Somewhere safe for a little while. Because of the man from last night, the one who gave us food." "Yes." Rosa was quiet for a moment, processing. Then, "Is he a good man or a bad man?" The question struck Cassandra like a physical blow. How did you explain to a 5-year-old that the world wasn't that simple, that men could be both, that sometimes the people who scared you are the only ones who could save you? "I think," Cassandra said carefully, "he's a man who does hard things to protect people who need protecting." Rosa considered this with the gravity of someone much older, like a superhero. Something like that. Iris stirred, then waking slowly. She blinked at the unfamiliar ceiling, then at her mother and sister, and Cassandra saw the moment when memory returned. The child's face started to crumple. "It's okay," Cassandra said quickly, gathering her into her arms. "We're safe. Look, we have a room, we have beds, and look what else we have." She pointed to the paper bag Diane had given them. Leftover cake, 2 sandwiches wrapped in foil. Both girls' eyes went wide. They ate slowly this time. Not with the desperate hunger of last night, but with the careful appreciation of children who'd learned that food was precious. Every bite savored, every crumb counted. Cassandra didn't eat. Her stomach had shrunk too much over the past months. The thought of food made her nauseous. But she watched her daughters eat and felt something in her chest unclench. After breakfast, she made her decision. She pulled the business card from her jacket pocket and stared at the embossed number. Her thumb traced the letters of his name, Dominic Castellano. She knew what calling this number meant, knew the door she'd be opening, knew the world she'd be stepping into. But Gregory Brennan and Tommy Valdez were still out there, still looking, still threatening, and Marcus had died trying to stop whatever they were part of. She picked up the room phone with shaking hands and dialed. It rang once, twice. On the third ring, a voice answered, male, professional. "Yes, I need to speak to Dominic Castellano." "Who's calling?" "Cassandra Moretti. He gave me this number last night at the diner." Silence. "Then hold, please." The line clicked. Muzak played. Cassandra's heart hammered so hard she could hear it in her ears. 30 seconds passed. A minute. Then the line clicked again and a different voice came through. Deeper. Rougher. The voice from last night. "Mrs. Moretti?" Just her name, no greeting, no explanation. Just acknowledgement that he knew exactly who she was and had been expecting her call. "Mr. Castellano, I thank you for last night, for the room, for everything. You didn't call to thank me." It wasn't a question. Cassandra closed her eyes. "No, I called because I need help. Real help. The kind I think only you can give. Tell me. Not what happened or what do you need. Just tell me. An invitation, an opening. Permission to speak the truth that had been choking her for 8 months. So she did. She told him everything. About Marcus's sudden death at 34, with no warning and no prior health problems. About finding the loan documents for $8,000 from Kaba Financial. About Gregory Brennan and Tommy Valdez showing up 2 weeks later, claiming Marcus owed $43,000. She told him about the 3 visits, the escalating threats, the way Tommy had looked at Rosa and Iris and said, "Those girls are worth something." She told him about the phone calls she'd recorded, about Marcus's notebook she'd found hidden in the garage filled with addresses and names and numbers that meant nothing to her but might mean something to someone who understood that world. She told him about 3 months of running, of watching her daughters grow thinner and quieter, of making choices no mother should have to make. And she told him why she'd come to the Riverside Diner last night. "I read about you," Cassandra said, her voice steady now, "in the newspaper. 3 months ago, there was an article about a charity, money donated to help families in crisis. Anonymous donor. But the reporter hinted it was you, that you help people who have nowhere else to turn. So you came looking for me. I came hoping. I didn't know if you'd be there, didn't know if you'd care, but I had $15 left and 2 hungry children and nowhere else to go. So I took a chance." Dominic was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different, softer, almost gentle. "Your husband was investigating Victor Kane." Cassandra's breath stopped. "How do you, I had people looking into your situation last night. Marcus made 3 calls to an FBI agent who specializes in organized crime 2 weeks before he died. KV Financial is a shell company owned by Kane. And Gregory Brennan and Tommy Valdez work for him." The past tense hung in the air. "Work," Cassandra whispered. "Present tense. For now, but not for long." Cassandra's hands shook. "There are others, aren't there? Other families they've done this to. We've found evidence of at least 19 so far, but I think the number will be higher when we finish the audit. Could be 23 families total." The number was so large it didn't feel real. "And my husband, did they kill him?" "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out." The certainty in his voice was absolute, not a promise, a fact. "I want to help," Cassandra said. The words came out before she could stop them. "Whatever you're planning, whatever you're going to do, I want to be part of it." "Mrs. Moretti," Please. Marcus was my husband. Rosa and Iris are my daughters. This is my fight. This is my city. Dominic's voice hardened. And what I'm going to do isn't something you want to be part of. I don't want to be part of the violence. I want to be part of the solution. I have Marcus's notebook. I have recordings. I have information that might help. Silence again. Cassandra could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. Finally, where's the notebook? Hidden in a storage locker. I kept the key. Give me the address. I'll send someone. No, Cassandra's voice was firm now. I'll bring it to you in person today. Mrs. Moretti, my husband died for whatever is in that notebook. The least I can do is hand it to you myself. Another pause. Then surprising her. All right, there's a cafe 2 blocks from your hotel. Lucia's Garden. Be there at 2 o'clock. Come alone. My people will watch your daughters while we talk. How did you know I'd want... You're a mother. You won't bring your children into danger if you can avoid it. 2 o'clock. Don't be late. The line went dead. Cassandra stood holding the phone for a long moment, her heart racing. She'd done it. She'd made the choice. Crossed the line. There was no going back now. At exactly 1:30, Cassandra stepped out of the hotel. Rosa and Iris stayed in the room with a woman named Anna, who'd arrived 20 minutes earlier. Mid-40s kind face, she'd introduced herself simply as working for Mr. Castellano and promised nothing bad would happen while she was there. The black sedan was still parked across the street. As Cassandra walked down the sidewalk, it started its engine and pulled out following at a discreet distance. Protection or surveillance. Maybe both. Lucia's Garden Cafe was exactly 2 blocks north, tucked between a bookstore and a law office. The sign above the door showed painted flowers and a name written in elegant script. Lucia. Cassandra remembered Dominic's words from last night. His sister, dead at 7, Christmas Eve, 27 years ago. She pushed open the door and stepped into warmth. The cafe was small but beautiful. Exposed brick walls, plants hanging from the ceiling, the smell of coffee and fresh bread. And in the back corner, sitting at a table with his back to the wall and his eyes on the door, was Dominic Castellano. He stood as she approached, gestured to the empty chair across from him. Mrs. Moretti? Mr. Castellano. She sat. A moment later, a waitress appeared with coffee. Hot, black. Cassandra wrapped her hands around the cup and let the heat seep into her cold fingers. You came alone, Dominic observed. You asked me to. Most people don't do what I ask unless they're afraid of me. I am afraid of you. Cassandra met his eyes. But I'm more afraid of Gregory Brennan and Tommy Valdez. And I think you're the only person who can make them go away permanently. Something flickered in Dominic's eyes. Respect, maybe. The notebook, he said. Cassandra pulled a small journal from her coat pocket. Brown leather worn at the edges. Marcus's handwriting on the cover. She'd carried it every day for 3 months, hidden in the lining of her jacket. She placed it on the table between them. Dominic picked it up with careful hands, opened it, began to read. Cassandra watched his face change as he turned the pages. His jaw tightened. His eyes went cold. The muscle in his cheek jumped. Your husband was a brave man, Dominic said finally, and a thorough one. These addresses, these names, this is a distribution network. Kane's operation. Drugs coming in through the port. Storage locations. Payment schedules. He looked up. This is worth killing for. That's what I thought. Gregory and Tommy found out Marcus had this information. They came to your house looking for it. When they didn't find it, they decided to take everything else instead. Make it look like debt collection so no one would question it. But why keep coming back if they didn't find it the first time? Because they thought you might lead them to it eventually. Or they were simply greedy. Probably both. Dominic closed the notebook. Either way, they made a mistake. What mistake? They touched someone protected. I wasn't protected. You didn't even know me. Dominic's eyes met hers. Every widow in this city is protected. Every child, every person who can't protect themselves. That's the rule. My rule. And Gregory Brennan and Tommy Valdez broke it. He pulled out his phone and typed a quick message. Within seconds, the door to the cafe opened and Vincent Santoro walked in. He was exactly what Cassandra expected. Broad-shouldered, hard-faced, the kind of man who'd seen violence and caused it in equal measure. But when he looked at Dominic, there was loyalty there. Something deeper than fear. Vincent, this is Cassandra Moretti. Mrs. Moretti, this is Vincent Santoro. He's going to ask you some questions about the recordings you mentioned. Vincent sat down and pulled out a small tablet. The phone calls from Tommy Valdez. When did they happen? The last one was 4 days ago, 2 in the morning. I recorded it on my phone. Still have the phone. Cassandra pulled it from her pocket. An old flip phone, the cheapest kind. Vincent took it, connected a cable, and began downloading data. The threatening statement about your daughters. That was on this call. Yes, he said, those girls are worth something. Premium price for blonde twins under 6. We've got buyers waiting. Vincent's expression darkened. He looked at Dominic. Human trafficking. I know. That's not just breaking rules, that's... I know, Vincent. The two men shared a look that communicated volumes without words. Vincent turned back to Cassandra. Any other evidence, anything else that might help? Marcus's life insurance. The company rejected the claim, said they needed to investigate. That was 6 months ago. I called yesterday. They said the investigation was ongoing but wouldn't tell me why. What company? Metropolitan Life. Vincent made notes. I'll get someone on it. If they're dragging their feet, there's a reason. He stood and handed Cassandra's phone back. Thank you, Mrs. Moretti. This helps. A lot. He left as quietly as he'd arrived. Dominic and Cassandra sat in silence for a moment. The cafe hummed with quiet conversation around them. Normal people having normal days. What happens now? Cassandra asked. Now I find Gregory Brennan and Tommy Valdez. I have a conversation with them about rules and consequences. And then I make sure they never threaten another family again. You're going to kill them. It wasn't a question. Dominic didn't flinch from it. I'm going to give them a choice. Make things right or face the alternative. What they choose determines what happens next. And if they choose wrong, then they won't be in a position to make any more choices. Cassandra should have been horrified, should have been repulsed by the casual way he discussed ending human lives. But all she felt was a fierce, burning satisfaction. Good, she said. Dominic studied her face. You understand what you're saying. I understand that they killed my husband, stole everything I own, threatened to sell my daughters. I understand that the police can't help me, the law can't help me. The only person who can help me is you. She leaned forward. So yes, I understand exactly what I'm saying. Make them pay. For the first time since they'd met, Dominic Castellano smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It wasn't kind, but it was real. Your husband would be proud of you. My husband would be alive if he'd asked for help instead of trying to be a hero. Cassandra's voice broke. I'm not making that mistake. Dominic reached across the table and did something that surprised her. He placed his hand over hers. Just for a moment. Just long enough for her to feel the warmth and the strength and the promise contained in that simple gesture. Go back to your daughters, he said. Stay in the room. Don't leave unless Vincent or Anna tells you it's safe. This will be over soon. How soon? By tomorrow morning, Gregory Brennan and Tommy Valdez will no longer be your problem. He stood, buttoned his jacket, looked down at her with those dark, unreadable eyes. One more thing, Mrs. Moretti. When this is done, when you're safe, there will be resources available. Money recovered from the men who stole from you and the other families. You'll never have to worry about $15 again. I don't want charity. It's not charity, it's restitution. It's justice, and it's yours. He walked out of the cafe before she could respond. Cassandra sat alone at the table, coffee growing cold in front of her, and felt the weight of what she'd just set in motion. She'd pointed a loaded gun at two men and pulled the trigger. The gun just happened to be named Dominic Castellano. God help them. God help her. That night, while Cassandra and her daughters slept safely in room 212, Dominic Castellano made phone calls. The first was to a coroner he'd helped years ago, a man who owed him the kind of favor that could never be repaid but would be honored nonetheless. Marcus Moretti died 8 months ago. Heart attack, supposedly. I need you to tell me if that's true. The coroner called back 3 hours later. Potassium chloride, injected directly into the heart, mimics a heart attack perfectly if you don't know to look for it. Metabolizes quickly, usually undetectable after 72 hours. But you detected it. I'm very good at my job, and someone paid me a lot of money 8 months ago to make sure my report said natural causes. Who? A name. Not Gregory Brennan or Tommy Valdez. Someone higher up the chain. Someone connected to Victor Kane. Dominic made another call. The second call was to the head of Metropolitan Life's fraud division, a woman he'd helped recover a stolen identity 5 years ago. Cassandra Moretti's life insurance claim. Why is it being delayed? Because someone at KV Financial flagged it, said the husband had outstanding debts that needed to be settled before any payout could be made. Our legal department is still reviewing. There are no debts. The loan was $8,000. The collateral taken was worth over $100,000. The debt is paid 10 times over. If you can prove that, I can, and I will, process the claim. Full payout by the end of the week. Mr. Castellano, I can't just... You can, and you will, because 5 years ago I gave you back your life. Now I'm asking you to give someone else theirs. Silence. Then I'll make it happen. The third call was to a judge who'd been on his payroll for a decade. I need a court order. All assets seized from Cassandra Moretti by KV Financial in the past 8 months. Declared illegally obtained and returned to her immediately. On what grounds? Fraud, extortion, murder? Pick one. I'll have documentation by morning. Dominic, if Kane finds out I signed this, Kane won't find out, because Kane is about to have much bigger problems than a court order. He ended that call and made one more. This one to a man who didn't owe him anything. A man who was technically his enemy. Victor Kane answered on the fourth ring. His voice was thick with sleep and alcohol. This better be important. It is. We need to meet. Castellano. What the hell? It's 3 in the morning. Exactly. Which means this is urgent. 1 hour, the warehouse on Pier 9. Come alone. I'm not stupid enough to meet you alone in a warehouse. Then bring your whole crew, I don't care. But if you want to avoid a war that will destroy everything you've built, you'll be there. He hung up before Kane could respond. Vincent appeared from the shadows of Dominic's office. You're really going to meet with Kane. I'm going to give him a choice. Clean up his operation or I'll do it for him. Starting with Gregory Brennan and Tommy Valdez. He won't hand them over. He will, because they've been stealing from him. Using his name without permission. Making him look weak, and I'm going to approve it. Dominic held up Marcus Moretti's notebook. This contains a year's worth of distribution records. Every delivery, every payment, every dollar that moved through Kane's operation. And it shows that Brennan and Valdez have been skimming 20 cents on every dollar for 18 months. Vincent's eyes widened. That's almost $200,000 from Kane's pocket. That's not debt collection. That's theft. And there's only one punishment for theft in our world. You're turning them over to Kane. Let him do your dirty work. I'm giving Kane the chance to clean his own house. What he does with that chance is his business. But one way or another, by tomorrow morning, Gregory Brennan and Tommy Valdez will answer for what they've done. Vincent was quiet for a moment. Then, what about the other families, the other widows they stole from? I want you to find every one of them, calculate exactly what was stolen, and then set up accounts. Anonymous donations, enough to give them back what they lost, plus 50%. Can you do that? It'll take a few days, but yes. Good, because this isn't just about Cassandra Moretti. This is about making sure every person in this city knows that there are still rules, that there are still consequences. He walked to the window and looked out at the city, his city. 27 years ago, Dominic said quietly, I watched my sister die because I was too weak to stop it. I swore that day that I would never be weak again, that I would never let anyone hurt someone under my protection. He turned to face Vincent. Cassandra Moretti and her daughters are protected now, and so is every other family that Brennan and Valdez destroyed. This ends tomorrow. All of it. At 4 in the morning, Dominic Castellano walked into the warehouse on Pier 9 with Vincent and 4 other men behind him. Victor Kane was already there with twice as many. The two groups faced each other across 50 feet of empty concrete, and the tension in the air was thick enough to taste. Kane was 45, built like a boxer gone to seed with a face that had been handsome once, but now just looked cruel. He wore an expensive tracksuit and enough gold jewelry to fund a small country. You've got some nerve, Kane said, calling me out here like I'm one of your soldiers. We're not here to fight, Dominic said. We're here to talk. About what? About 2 men who work for you, Gregory Brennan and Tommy Valdez. Kane's expression didn't change. What about them? They've been running a side operation, targeting widows, creating fake debts, stealing everything these women own and pocketing the money. That's debt collection. It's legal. It's fraud, and it's making you look bad. Word on the street is that Victor Kane's men are so desperate, they're terrorizing widows and children. Kane's face darkened. I don't terrorize women and children. Then you won't mind if I prove that your men do. Dominic pulled out Marcus Moretti's notebook and threw it across the space between them. It landed at Kane's feet. That's a year's worth of records from one of your operations. Distribution schedules, payment records. And embedded in those records is proof that Brennan and Valdez have been skimming 20 cents on every dollar for 18 months. That's almost $200,000. Kane picked up the notebook. Read. His face went from red to white to red again. Your money, Dominic continued, stolen by men who work for you, men who are making you look weak, men who are violating every code we operate under. He took a step forward. I want them, Dominic said, both of them. Tonight, you hand them over and this ends. You don't, and I go to war, not with you, with them. And everyone in this city will know that Victor Kane couldn't control his own men. Kane's jaw worked. He looked at the notebook, then at Dominic, then at his own crew. You're asking me to give up 2 of my guys. I'm asking you to cut out a cancer before it kills you. They've stolen from you. They've brought attention to your operations. They've made enemies you can't afford to have. And worst of all, Dominic pulled out Cassandra's phone and played the recording. Tommy Valdez's voice filled the warehouse. Those girls are worth something. Premium price for blonde twins under 6. We've got buyers waiting. The color drained from Kane's face. Human trafficking was a line even he wouldn't cross. Not because of morals, but because the FBI treated it differently. More resources, more attention, more heat than any operation could survive. They said that Kane's voice was dangerous. They said that. About 2 5-year-old girls whose father was murdered because he found out too much about your distribution network. Kane looked at his men, made a decision. Where are they? I was hoping you could tell me. Kane pulled out his phone and made a call, spoke in rapid Russian, ended the call. They're at a warehouse in Bridgeport. My warehouse. They've been using it to store stolen property. He looked at Dominic with something like grudging respect. They're yours. Do what you need to do. But Castellano, this makes us even. All debts paid. You don't come after my operation, and I don't come after yours. Agreed, as long as you stay in your lane and I stay in mine. Kane nodded once and walked out, his crew following. Vincent appeared beside Dominic. That went better than expected. Because I gave him a way to save face while cleaning up a problem. He couldn't let Brennan and Valdez live after hearing that recording, not without looking weak. So we let him think he's doing us a favor. Exactly. Dominic checked his phone as a text came through with an address. Let's go. I want this finished before sunrise. The warehouse in Bridgeport was exactly what Cassandra had imagined when she thought of places where bad men did bad things. Rusted metal siding, broken windows, the smell of old oil and older secrets. Dominic's team surrounded it in less than 3 minutes. Vincent kicked in the door at exactly 5:30 in the morning. Gregory Brennan and Tommy Valdez were inside sleeping on cots surrounded by stolen property from a dozen different homes. They woke to find 6 guns pointed at their faces and Dominic Castellano standing over them like judgment incarnate. Get up, Dominic said quietly. They got up. Within 90 seconds, they were zip-tied to metal chairs, fully awake and fully terrified. Dominic pulled up a 3rd chair and sat down facing them. Casual, relaxed, like this was a business meeting instead of an execution. Gregory Brennan, Tommy Valdez, do you know who I am? Both men nodded frantically. Good, then you know I don't waste time. So I'll make this simple. You've been stealing from widows, creating fake debts, terrorizing families, using Victor Kane's name without his permission, and planning to traffic children. We were just collecting, Gregory started. You were stealing. And worse, you murdered Marcus Moretti, potassium chloride injected directly into the heart. I have the coroner's report. I have the evidence. And I have a recording of you discussing the sale of his daughters. Tommy's face went gray. Kane knows, Dominic continued. He knows about the money you stole from him. He knows about the trafficking. And he gave you to me. So here's your choice. He leaned forward. You have 48 hours to return every dollar you stole from every family you targeted. We've identified 23 widows. Full restitution plus 50% interest. You liquidate every asset you own. You sell everything, and you pay them back. That's impossible, Tommy whispered. We don't have that kind of money. Then you make it possible, or you don't leave this warehouse alive. You can't just kill us. I can, I will, and no one will care, because you broke the rules. You touched women and children. You planned to traffic innocent lives. You murdered a man who was trying to do the right thing. There's no coming back from that. The 2 men looked at each other, weighing their chances. Choose, Dominic said. We'll pay, Gregory said quickly. We'll pay everyone back, every dollar. Just let us go. Vincent will be watching you, every move, every transaction. You try to run, you die. You try to hide money, you die. You contact Kane, you die. Your only chance is to make this right and then leave Chicago and never come back. Understood. Both men nodded. Dominic stood. 48 hours, starting now. Vincent cut the zip ties and Gregory and Tommy scrambled toward the door. They made it 3 steps before Dominic's voice stopped them cold. One more thing. They turned terrified. If I ever hear that you've touched another family, targeted another widow, even looked at a child the wrong way, I will find you. And I will make sure your deaths take much, much longer than they need to. The 2 men ran. Vincent looked at Dominic. You really think they'll pay everyone back? I think they'll try. And if they don't, they know what happens. And after the 48 hours, Dominic pulled out his phone and made one final call to someone Vincent didn't recognize. There will be 2 men leaving Chicago in exactly 48 hours. Gregory Brennan and Tommy Valdez. I want to know where they go, and I want to know if they ever try to come back. He ended the call and looked at Vincent. They won't come back. Men like that are cowards. Once they're gone, they'll stay gone. And if they don't pay everyone back, then they won't make it 48 hours. The 2 men walked out of the warehouse into the rising sun. Behind them in room 212 of the Riverside Inn, Cassandra Moretti woke to find an envelope had been slid under her door. Inside was a single piece of paper with one sentence written in neat handwriting. It's over. You're safe. Decoym. And $300 in cash. 6 months passed like a dream Cassandra kept expecting to wake from. But she didn't wake, because it wasn't a dream. The morning after finding the envelope under her door, Vincent Santoro had appeared at room 212 with news that changed everything. Gregory Brennan and Tommy Valdez had 48 hours to make restitution. 23 families in total once Vincent's team finished the full audit. Not 19. 23 widows whose husbands had died suddenly, whose lives had been stripped away by men who saw vulnerability as opportunity. Cassandra was one of 23, but she was the only one who'd fought back. Within a week, money began appearing in accounts. Wire transfers from liquidated assets, cash deliveries in unmarked envelopes. Every stolen dollar returned with 50% interest, exactly as Dominic had promised. Cassandra received $17,300, more money than she'd ever seen in her life. The first thing she did was buy shoes. Real shoes, not thrift store cast-offs. Pink sneakers with lights in the heels that made Rosa squeal with delight. Purple ones with butterflies for Iris, who really smiled for the first time in months. The second thing she did was rent an apartment. Not the one Dominic offered, though he'd made it clear she could have it. 2 bedrooms in a secure building with a doorman and security cameras. Paid for a year in advance. No questions asked. But Cassandra had learned something in 8 months of hell. She'd learned that accepting too much help made you dependent, made you beholden, made you forget how to stand on your own. So she found a smaller place. 1 bedroom, 4th floor walk-up in a neighborhood that was safe enough, but not fancy. $350 a month. She could afford that. Could afford to rebuild slowly, carefully on her own terms. She kept $2,000 in savings and put the rest toward Marcus's funeral. A real funeral. Not the pauper's burial she'd been forced to accept 8 months ago when there was no money and less hope. Marcus Moretti was laid to rest on a Tuesday morning in June with flowers and a headstone that read, "Beloved husband and father, gone but not forgotten." Rosa and Iris stood on either side of their mother holding pink and purple flowers that matched their new shoes. They didn't understand death the way adults did, didn't grasp the finality of it. But they understood that Daddy was somewhere peaceful now, somewhere safe. "Will Daddy know about our new house?" Rosa asked as they walked away from the grave. "He knows, baby. He's watching over us. Is he happy we're not scared anymore?" Cassandra's throat closed. "Yes, he's very happy." They took the bus home. Cassandra didn't have a car anymore, and she'd learned to be okay with that. Buses were reliable. Buses were cheap. Buses meant she could save money for the things that mattered. Like the job she'd started 3 weeks earlier. The flower shop had appeared in her life through Vincent Santoro's quiet intervention. "There's a woman named Margaret Chen," Vincent had said one morning, appearing at Cassandra's door with coffee and a newspaper circled in red ink. "She owns Petal and Stem on 4th Street. She's looking for help, full-time, decent pay. She doesn't ask questions." Cassandra had gone to the interview expecting nothing. She had no recent work history, no references, no explanation for the 8-month gap that wouldn't raise concerns. But Margaret Chen was 70 years old with shrewd eyes and a gentle smile, and she'd taken one look at Cassandra and said, You've been through hell. Not a question, a statement. Yes, ma'am. Do you know anything about flowers? No, ma'am. Can you show up on time and work hard? Yes, ma'am. Then you're hired. $7 an hour, 8 to 4 Monday through Saturday. Sundays off, start tomorrow. That had been 3 weeks ago. Now Cassandra knew the difference between roses and ranunculus, between baby's breath and static. She knew how to arrange bouquets and trim stems and talk to customers who wanted something special for someone they loved. She was good at it, better than she expected. There was something calming about working with flowers, something that made the world feel less chaotic. Margaret noticed. Of course she noticed. You have a gift, the old woman said one afternoon, watching Cassandra arrange a wedding bouquet. Natural talent. I could train you. Properly, if you're interested. Train me as a florist. Real training. Certification. It takes time, but you'd be qualified to run your own shop eventually, or manage mine when I retire. Cassandra stared at her. Why would you do that? Margaret's smile was knowing. Because Vincent Santoro asked me to give you a job, but he didn't ask me to lie to you. You're good at this. You could be great. And I'm old enough to recognize when someone deserves a second chance. That night, Cassandra cried. Not from sadness, from something else. Something that felt dangerously close to happiness. The apartment became home slowly. Rosa and Iris shared the bedroom. Twin beds bought secondhand but sturdy, pink and purple blankets to match their shoes. Stuffed animals from the dollar store that they treated like treasures. Cassandra slept on the couch. It wasn't ideal, but it was hers. Clean sheets, warm blankets, safety. She kept the place meticulously clean. Old habits from 3 months of shelters where cleanliness was survival. But danger didn't appear. Weeks passed, then a month, then 2. No threatening phone calls. No men showing up at her door. No shadow of Gregory Brennan or Tommy Valdez darkening her life. Vincent appeared once a month like clockwork, always on a Tuesday morning, always with an envelope. From Mr. Castellano, he'd say, handing over gift cards for groceries, vouchers for utilities, small amounts of cash for emergencies. I don't need charity, Cassandra said the third time he appeared. It's not charity, it's protection. You're part of the family now. Family takes care of each other. I'm not part of any family. Vincent's expression was patient. You called the number. You asked for help. He gave it. That makes you family, whether you accept it or not. She stopped arguing after that, learned to just say thank you and use the money for things that mattered. Dance classes for Rosa, who'd always wanted to learn ballet. Art supplies for Iris, who spent hours drawing elaborate pictures of flowers and butterflies, and houses with big windows that let in light. And every month without fail, Vincent brought news. Gregory Brennan left the country. Australia. He won't be back. Tommy Valdez disappeared. Rumor is he's in Mexico, also not coming back. Victor Kane's operation was raided by the FBI. He's looking at 20 years. Your husband's notebook was the key evidence. Each piece of news was another weight lifted, another ghost laid to rest. By the 4th month, Cassandra stopped looking over her shoulder. By the 5th month, she stopped dreaming about men breaking down her door. By the 6th month, she realized she was sleeping through the night. It was June again. 1 year since Marcus died, 6 months since Christmas Eve in a diner with $15 and 2 terrified children. Cassandra stood in petal and stem arranging roses for a wedding that weekend when the bell over the door chimed. She looked up and froze. Dominic Castellano stood in the doorway looking somehow both out of place and completely at ease in a flower shop. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Cassandra made in 6 months. His hair was shorter than she remembered, more gray at the temples, but his eyes were the same. Dark, intense, seeing too much. Mr. Castellano. Cassandra set down the roses, suddenly aware of how she must look. Hair pulled back in a messy bun, dirt under her fingernails from repotting orchids. An apron that said, "Life is better with flowers." Mrs. Moretti, he stepped inside, sawing. Vincent tells me you're doing well. Vincent talks too much. The corner of Dominic's mouth twitched, almost a smile. He's thorough. It's why I trust him. Why are you here? Direct, blunt. 6 months ago, Cassandra would have been too afraid to speak to him that way. Now she was just tired of pretending. To see how you're doing and to give you something. He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. Cassandra's stomach sank. I told Vincent I don't need more money. This isn't money. He held it out. After a moment, Cassandra took it. Inside was a single document, legal paper, official seals, life insurance payout $250,000, beneficiary Cassandra Moretti. She stared at the number until it blurred. Marcus's insurance. They finally processed it. With some encouragement, Dominic's voice was neutral. The money is in an account under your name. No strings, no conditions. No, it's yours. Cassandra couldn't speak. $250,000. Enough to buy a house. Send Rosa and Iris to college. Build a future that didn't involve counting pennies. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. It's what Marcus would have wanted, what he worked for. He died trying to do the right thing, and his family deserves to benefit from his courage. She looked up at Dominic, this man who controlled half the city through fear and violence, who'd looked at her daughters and seen a ghost who'd moved mountains to give a stranger justice. Thank you, she said, inadequate words, but the only ones she had. Dominic nodded once. There's something else. Your daughters, Rosa and Iris. They're starting kindergarten in the fall. Yes, how did you... Vincent mentioned it. There's a school, private, good teachers, safe environment, full scholarship available if you're interested. Cassandra's first instinct was to refuse. But she looked at the insurance document and thought about what Marcus would say. He'd say, take it. Take everything offered. Give our daughters every advantage. I'm interested, she said quietly. I'll have Vincent send you the information. Dominic moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing. Margaret mentioned she's thinking of retiring in a few years. She told you that. We're old friends. That almost smile again. When she's ready, if you want to buy the business, there are resources available. Low-interest loans through organizations I'm affiliated with. You wouldn't be alone. Cassandra felt tears burning. Why do all of this? We're nobody. Dominic was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. 27 years ago, my sister died because no one protected her. Because the people who should have helped looked the other way. He turned to face her fully. I built everything I have on a promise. That no one under my protection would suffer the way Lucia suffered. That no child would die because adults failed them. His eyes held hers. You're not nobody, Mrs. Moretti. You're someone who fought back when the world tried to crush you. You're someone who protected her children with nothing but courage and $15. And you're someone who reminds me why I made that promise in the first place. Before Cassandra could respond, he walked out. She stood alone in the flower shop holding a life insurance payout and cried. That evening, Cassandra took Rosa and Iris to a park 3 blocks from their apartment. Real playground, safe neighborhood, other children playing under parents' watchful eyes. The twins ran straight for the swings, their voices high and bright with joy. Cassandra sat on a bench and watched them play, really play, the way children should. A woman sat down beside her. Mid-30s professional clothes. She smiled. Beautiful girls, the woman said. Thank you. Twins, yes, Rosa and Iris, 5 years old. They sat in comfortable silence. Then the woman stood. Nice to meet you. Maybe we'll see you here again. Maybe. After she left, Cassandra pulled out her phone. She'd been carrying Dominic's business card for 6 months. The numbers memorized but never dialed. She typed a text message. Thank you for everything. We're safe now because of you. I won't forget. She hit send. 3 minutes later, her phone buzzed. You were always safe. I just reminded the world of that. Take care of your daughters. DC Cassandra smiled and put her phone away. The weeks turned to months. Summer arrived. Rosa and Iris played in sprinklers, ate popsicles, forgot what it felt like to be cold and scared. Cassandra was promoted at Petal and STEM, $8 an hour, more responsibility, more respect. Margaret began teaching her the business side, ordering, inventory, customer relations. You're a natural, the old woman said. By the time I retire, you'll be ready. In August, a letter arrived, official letterhead, St. Catherine's Academy. Rosa and Iris had been accepted for the fall semester, full scholarship, everything included. Cassandra bought school supplies with money from Marcus's insurance, real supplies. Crayola crayons in the big box, folders with their favorite characters, backpacks that weren't falling apart. Rosa chose pink with sparkles. Iris chose purple with butterflies. They started school on a Tuesday in September. The teacher, Miss Amy, smiled and welcomed both girls warmly. We'll take good care of them, Miss Amy promised. Cassandra believed her. That afternoon, she picked up Rosa and Iris to find them chattering about their day, about letters they'd learned, about a story Miss Amy had read, about friends they'd made. Normal things, Regular things, the things 5-year-olds should care about. That night, Cassandra sat in their small apartment and cried. But this time it was different. This time she was crying from joy. October brought cool air and falling leaves. Halloween. Rosa wanted to be a princess. Iris wanted to be a butterfly. Cassandra made costumes from fabric bought at a thrift store, staying up late with needle and thread. On Halloween night, they trick-or-treated in their safe neighborhood. Rosa collected enough candy to last a month. Iris gave half of hers away to other kids who had less. "That's very sweet of you," Cassandra told her. "You always shared with us when we didn't have much," Iris said simply. "So I should share too." 5 years old and already learning empathy. November arrived with the first snow. Rosa and Iris watched it fall with wonder instead of fear. They had warm coats now, real boots, gloves that matched their hats. They ran outside and made snow angels. Their laughter echoed off brick walls. Other children joined them. Cassandra made hot chocolate, real hot chocolate, marshmallows floating on top. They sat together on the couch wrapped in blankets, watching a movie. "Mama," Rosa said during a commercial. "Yes, baby. Are we rich now?" Cassandra thought about the insurance money, $230,000 after expenses. "We're comfortable," she said. "We have what we need and a little extra." "Oh," Rosa thought about this. "That's good. Being comfortable is better than being rich anyway." "Why do you say that?" "Because rich people in movies are always mean, but comfortable people are happy." 5-year-old wisdom. Cassandra kissed the top of her daughter's head. December came fast. Christmas decorations appeared, carols played. The city transformed. 1 year ago, Cassandra had been counting pennies. Now she stood in pedal and stem, creating arrangements for holiday parties, earning enough to not just survive, but live. "You've come a long way," Margaret said one afternoon. "I had help. We all need help sometimes. The trick is knowing when to ask for it and how to use it." You did both. On December 23rd, Vincent appeared with an envelope, as always, but this time he also brought a small package wrapped in silver paper. "From the boss, Merry Christmas." Cassandra opened it carefully. Inside was a photograph in a simple frame. A young girl, maybe 7, with dark hair and a bright smile, laughing at something off camera. Written on the back, "Lucia Maria Castellano. May she rest in peace and watch over those who need protection." Cassandra stared at the photo. This was who Dominic had lost. This beautiful child whose death had shaped everything. "He wants you to have it," Vincent said quietly. He said Rosa reminds him of her. And he wants you to know that Lucia would be happy. Happy that her memory led to something good. Cassandra carefully propped the photograph on the counter. "Tell him thank you," she said, "and tell him we remember. That we'll always remember." Vincent nodded and left. That night, Cassandra took Rosa and Iris to see Christmas lights. They walked slowly, holding hands, looking at displays that twinkled in the cold air. "Mama," Iris said, "can we go back to that diner, the one where we met the nice man?" "Why do you want to go there?" "Because that's where everything changed, where we stopped being scared." "I want to say thank you." Rosa nodded. "Me too." Cassandra thought about it, about walking back into that place, about facing memories. "Okay," she said, "we'll go on Christmas Eve, tomorrow night." The Riverside Diner looked exactly the same. Red vinyl booths, checkered floor, paper snowflakes. But everything felt different. Cassandra walked in with her daughters, and this time she didn't duck her head, didn't make herself small. They sat in the same corner booth, the same one where she'd trembled with fear a year ago. Diane, the waitress, appeared with menus. She looked at Cassandra for a long moment, recognition dawning. "You came back," Diane said softly. "We wanted to. I'm glad, and I'm sorry, for how I treated you before. I was wrong, very wrong. You were doing your job. I was being cruel. There's a difference." Diane pulled out her pad. "Whatever you want tonight, it's on the house. You don't have to." "I want to, please." Rosa and Iris ordered grilled cheese sandwiches and chocolate cake, the same meal from a year ago. But this time Cassandra ordered too, a burger, coffee, pie. They ate slowly, savoring it. Not from hunger, but from memory, from marking how far they'd come. Halfway through the meal, the door opened. Cassandra looked up. Dominic Castellano stood in the doorway, snowflakes melting on his black coat. He looked around until his eyes found their table. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Rosa jumped up and ran to him. "Mr. Dom." Dominic caught her, steadying her with careful hands. His expression cracked into something softer. "Hello, Rosa. We came to say thank you. Mama said we could." Iris joined her sister, and Dominic found himself surrounded by two 5-year-old girls who showed no fear of him. He looked at Cassandra over their heads, a question in his eyes. She nodded. Permission granted. Dominic walked to their booth with Rosa and Iris still attached to his arms. He slid into the seat across from Cassandra, and the twins climbed in beside him, chattering about school and Christmas and everything. "We're not scared anymore," Rosa announced proudly. "We have a house, and Mama has a job, and we go to school, and everything is good now." "I'm glad," Dominic said. His voice was rougher than usual. "That's all I wanted, for you to be safe. We drew you pictures." Iris pulled folded papers from her pocket. "Look, this is you protecting us from bad guys. And this is Lucia. Mama told us about her. She's in heaven watching over us now." Dominic took the drawings with shaking hands. Rosa showed a tall figure in black standing between two small girls and shadowy monsters. Iris showed a garden full of flowers with two little girls playing and an angel watching from above. He stared at them for a long moment. Then he carefully folded them and put them in his jacket pocket. "Thank you," he said. "I'll keep these forever." Cassandra watched him, this dangerous man, reduced to near tears by children's crayon drawings. "How are you?" Dominic asked Cassandra. "Really? Better than I've been in a long time. Margaret offered to make me a partner when she retires, if I want it." "You can afford it. The insurance money." "I'm not using that for business. That's for Rosa and Iris. College, their future." She met his eyes. "But I've been saving. And Margaret says she'll structure the partnership so I can buy in slowly, on my own." Something like approval flickered in Dominic's expression. "You're building something real. Something yours. Something Marcus would be proud of. Something he is proud of." Dominic's voice was certain. "Wherever he is, he's watching, and he's grateful someone took care of his family." They sat together for another hour, talking about small things, Rosa and Iris's progress in school, Margaret's plans, Christmas lights downtown, normal conversation. As they prepared to leave, Dominic walked them to the door. "If you ever need anything," he said, "anything at all, you still have the number." "I know, but I won't need it," Cassandra smiled. "You gave us the tools to build our own life. We're doing that now, on our own. That's the best kind of protection, the kind that teaches you to protect yourself." He knelt down to Rosa and Iris's level. "You two take care of your mama. She's the bravest person I've ever met." "We will," they chorused. Dominic stood and looked at Cassandra one last time. "Merry Christmas, Mrs. Moretti." "Merry Christmas, Mr. Castellano." He walked out into the snow. Cassandra took her daughter's hands and walked in the opposite direction. Back to their small apartment, their safe life, their hard-won peace. That night, after Rosa and Iris fell asleep, Cassandra stood at the window and looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, Dominic Castellano was moving through his domain, protecting, enforcing, maintaining balance. She didn't need to know the details. She just needed to know that somewhere in this city, someone was making sure that widows weren't terrorized, that children weren't trafficked, that vulnerable people had a defender. It wasn't traditional heroism, wasn't clean or simple, but it was real, and it mattered. Cassandra pulled out her phone and sent one last text. "You asked me once why I called your number. I called because I saw something in your eyes that first night. Not danger, not violence, but recognition. You knew what it felt like to be powerless. And you'd spent your whole life making sure no one else had to feel that way. Thank you for seeing us, for saving us, for giving us a chance to save ourselves." The response came 10 minutes later. 27 years ago, I failed someone. 1 year ago, you gave me the chance to succeed. We saved each other. Take care of those beautiful girls. And remember, you're never alone. Not anymore. DC Cassandra read the message 3 times, then saved it. She thought about Lucia, about a 7-year-old girl who died trying to buy her brother a birthday cake, about how that single tragedy had rippled outward across decades, touching lives Lucia would never know existed. 23 families restored, hundreds of thousands of dollars recovered, a corrupt system exposed, all because Dominic Castellano had looked at 2 5-year-old girls and seen his sister's face. All because Cassandra Moretti had walked into a diner with $15 and refused to give up. She looked at the photograph Vincent had brought, Lucia's bright smile. "Thank you," Cassandra whispered, "for teaching him to protect us, for showing him that some things are worth fighting for being the reason my daughters are sleeping safely tonight." Outside, snow began to fall, gentle, quiet, and in that small apartment, a widow and her 2 daughters slept peacefully. No fear, no hunger, No danger, just safety, just love, just life. The last $15 had bought them a meal, but it had also bought them so much more. It had bought them Dominic Castellano's attention, his protection, his resources. And through him, they'd found the strength to rebuild. Sometimes salvation came from unexpected places. Sometimes heroes wore dark suits. Sometimes the scariest person in the room was the only one willing to help. And sometimes $15 was enough to change the world. Not the whole world, just the world of two 5-year-old girls who would grow up knowing that when darkness threatened, someone had stood between them and it without hesitation. That was worth everything. Cassandra closed her eyes and let herself sleep. Really sleep, deeply, peacefully. Tomorrow she would wake up and go to work. She would arrange flowers and serve customers and save money for a future she could finally believe in. Rosa would practice ballet. Iris would draw pictures. They would have dinner together and laugh and make plans and live the beautifully ordinary life that Marcus had wanted for them. And somewhere in the city, Dominic Castellano would continue his vigil. Watching, protecting. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't simple. It wasn't the fairy tale ending that stories usually promised. But it was real. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Rosa and Iris Moretti, now 6 years old, stood at the front of their first grade classroom. They'd been asked to talk about someone who inspired them. Rosa spoke first. "We want to talk about brave people, not superheroes, real people." Iris continued, "Like our mama, who kept us safe when things were scary, and like a man named Dominic, who helped us when we needed it most." "But also," Rosa said, "about a girl named Lucia. We never met her, she died a long time ago. But because of her, lots of people are safe now. Because her brother remembered her and decided to protect other kids the way he couldn't protect her. So even though she's gone," Iris finished, "she's still helping people. And that's the bravest thing of all." The teacher smiled. "That's beautiful, girls. Thank you." That night, Cassandra received a text from an unknown number. "I heard what your daughter said today about Lucia. Thank you for keeping her memory alive. It means more than you know." Dico's Cassandra smiled and typed back, "She deserves to be remembered. Heroes should never be forgotten, even the ones we never got to meet." And in an office overlooking the city, Dominic Castellano placed his phone down and looked at the crayon drawings taped to his wall. Rosa's protector, Iris's angel. For the first time in 27 years, the weight on his chest felt lighter. Lucia's death had meant something, had led to something good. 23 families saved. 2 little girls who would grow up safe and strong. A widow who'd found her way back from despair. It didn't erase the past, didn't bring Lucia back, but it meant her death hadn't been meaningless. That her memory lived on and every family protected every child saved. That was redemption. Not forgiveness, but purpose. And for a man like Dominic Castellano, purpose was enough. Because somewhere in this city there would always be widows who needed help, children who needed protection, families who needed someone to stand between them and the darkness. And as long as Dominic Castellano drew breath, he would be that someone. For Lucia, for Cassandra, for Rosa and Iris, for all of them. Always.